Tamam. Okay, so let's start the training part 1 for international trade and logistics, English use. We will be looking at some brief ideas about the field, of course. Many of you will already have accumulated the necessary information regarding the field, of course, but usually it cannot be backed up by the language itself, whatever the language that you need is for that specific area of expertise and the specific product and operation. So we will look at some fundamentals of international trade and logistics in this training part 1. We will look at supply chain, a general interpretation. By the way, yeah, okay. We will look at transportation peculiarities, customer services and support, Incoterms, meaning international commercial terms. These are very important. And also, we will look at inbound logistics and outbound logistics processes. These are very brief, but also we will look at some common abbreviations. I will also send you a list of abbreviations and terminology, and also some daily communication use in the field of international trade and logistics. And you will have some exercises there to back this training up. And if you would like to ask any question during the meeting, you can always feel free to raise your hand or just directly ask, turn on your microphone. I don't think it will be an interruption. So that's okay. Just wanted to say that. So let's have a look at the fundamentals of international trade and logistics. So this training material is aimed to help international logistics and foreign trade professionals who speak English as a second language and wish to expand their knowledge on those vast areas of expertise. So I highlighted some words or phrases inside the material so that we can revert back to them in a future lesson. And also, I will share all of these terminologies and also the highlighted phrases and words with you after on, so that you can specifically look at their meaning and try to use it in a context. So I highlighted these not because these are technical terms, because I think they are kind of explanatory and also very specific in terms of certain characteristics. So expand. Do we know what this means? For example, expand. We should expand their knowledge on those vast areas of expertise. What does that mean?
Genişletmek mi?
Yes, exactly. So, exactly. And vast, what does that mean? Vast.
Büyük.
Yes, it's very, very wide or large, right? So vast areas of expertise. So there are certain words like these that are synonyms. They have the same meaning with other words, very simple words, but usually we think they are different words, but don't think of them like that. Usually they are synonyms of words that we already know. So try to think about these kinds of words in terms of synonyms, instead of the Turkish or any other language equivalent. So the materials presented are not limited to the vocabulary used in commercial activities between companies involved in international business, but also cover a great variety of situations that illustrate the practical use so that the professionals are encouraged to develop their functions in the proper and standardized way. The companies that operate internationally are in need of professionals that are capable of effectively exercising the skills related to logistics, and that certainly includes clear communication. So in this material, in the three parts of this English for International Trade and Logistics training series, we are going to cover all of the following: modes of transport and their characteristics, documents interpretation, analysis and resolution of cases through formal and also everyday electronic messages, different aspects of the goods being transported and their peculiarities, communication through the supply chain, frequently used terminology, enrichment of the appropriate vocabulary, and timely and objective adequacy of communication, taking into account international business guidelines. So the contractor in an international trade and logistics setting expects the international logistics and foreign trade professional to utilize her language and communication skills to add value to the business, either through proactive diligence in the execution of tasks, standardizing and reducing costs through effective communication, or taking care of customers and/or clients. The contractors do not expect perfection of the international trade and logistics processes. They expect potential issues to be resolved when they arise. In this sense, the use of appropriate language and accurate communication is crucial. So let's have a look at a standard definition of logistics. So logistics is the management of materials flow through an organization from raw materials to finished articles, right? So here, article may mean something else than we are used to. What might it be? So here, in the context of international trade and logistics, article means what? What do you think?
Agreement? It's just a guess.
Yeah, it's a good guess, because in agreements, there are usually articles, right? Consisting of information. But here it is something else. It is just the product that we are actually sending to another place. So in the context of international trade and logistics, when you say article, it means a product, it's a commodity, okay? So it's a product that you are sending to somewhere else when you say article. So they say finished article because from raw materials, which are in the nature, right? For example, gold, it's a raw material in nature, but then you process the gold and you turn it into jewelry. So it becomes an article, right? So think about it like that. It's a synonym for a different thing. Normally, when you say article, it can mean something like a statement in a legal document, as you said, but here it is product. The practical meaning, however, adds a few details such as, so normally the standard definition of logistics is this, yes, the management of materials flow through an organization from raw materials to finished articles. But the practical meaning in reality adds a few details, such as the procurement and movement of goods that customers need at the right time, in the right place, well packed, showing excellent quality and fair price. Planning and distribution of goods, warehouse and inventory handling, value-added services and support provided by the vendor, such as return authorization, credits processing, quality documentation, review, recycling, orders cancellations, or amendments. So here, when I say vendor, what do I mean? Do you know what vendor is?
Client, maybe.
It's kind of a client, but
Customer.
Yeah, client and customer, yes, but it's kind of a different type of client and customer, because when you say vendor, it's someone who is working with you, but for you also. So think about this. I am a business that is outsourcing, right? So we are doing things that other companies are not doing in their own organization. So we are a vendor to that company. We are doing their job. We are outsourcing their job. So we are their vendors. So it's kind of like we have clients, but we provide services to them. And also there are certain organizations that use us as vendors. So then you can actually work for them and be their client at the same time. So that's a strange combination, I know, but that's why they call it vendor. And also we have amendment. Do you know what that means? Amendments. So amend is a verb that we use so that we mean to fix something. Okay, so if there's something broken about it, if there's something that is not right, not correct, then you amend it. So if you amend it, then you have made an amendment. Okay, so that's the noun form of the actual verb, which is amend. So this is a very important word, by the way, in the context of international trade and logistics. Amendments, and we will look at that in our next material. So IT solutions used by cooperating partners focusing on process reliability, work hour reduction, real-time info, instant delivery performance reports, backorder administration, documents download, 24/7 interface in a matter of few clicks, and others. So this is another type of definition incorporated by logistics. So this is also something that you need to focus on when you are conducting logistics operations. And also flow of communication is highly important. In order to take cost-effective decisions, the companies need the most accurate information and clear communication. The English language has become an essential tool for the success of the foreign trade profession. It is easy to notice that fair negotiations and adequate exchange of information are simply impossible without using the right communication channels. So here, negotiation is the important word, right? So in international trade dealings and logistics operations, you need to be very clear when you are negotiating with a partner or when you are negotiating with someone you are trading with. So I assume everyone knows the meaning of negotiation already, but do you really? So do you really actually know the meaning of negotiation? If you don't know, please raise your hand. So everybody knows, right? So negotiate, it comes from that verb source, and you can say negotiation. The development of any domestic economy strictly depends on international trade along with the logistics process. So of course, as an economy, for example, as the Turkish economy, we cannot stand alone, right? We need other countries. We need to do business with other countries so we can stay afloat. And here, one of the important words is domestic in terms of international trade and logistics, because instead of saying local, you can say domestic if it's happening inside the boundaries of your own country. So if I say my domestic economy, our domestic economy, which country am I talking about? Turkish domestic economy, right? So here we have another word, which is strictly. So strictly means without any exceptions. So if you say something strictly depends on international trade, then it is very, very disciplined. You have to be very disciplined to actually make it work, okay? So it is easy to observe that in recent years, the global logistics market has grown considerably and product distribution has reached a certain degree of complexity. The intermodal transport system via ocean, truck, air, and rail is required to manage the flow of goods from the place where those are produced to the end user, no matter where it is located in the world. Nonetheless, nothing will happen without international coordination. That is, the language diversity is one big challenge, and the impacts caused by a bad flow of communication might be vital for competitiveness. Supply chain is more about information than the movement of materials. So the organizations involved expect the information to be provided as accurately as possible, and the plan should be executed based on the type of interactions between the partners. A simple misunderstanding through daily communication could be enough for a customer to buy a product somewhere else, and the seller would never know the reason. So their revenues might disappear simply because the customer found a better communication service. That said, clear communication, particularly in English, is essential to work as an international trader or logistics professional. The contents of this presentation will show the correct and standard vocabulary to be used by sellers, buyers, logistics agents, freight forwarders, air carriers, employees, customer service, warehousing personnel, and others, especially those that speak English as a second language. Real examples, daily life in the office, common abbreviations, and other useful aspects will be covered to show you things can be less complex if the right tools and knowledge are used throughout the supply chain environment. Communication should be considered one of the main priorities throughout the workflow because it directly involves a better interaction with the business partners, which results in less costly operations and assures the quality of service. It is generally a complex subject to deal with, so the more effective you are able to get across the meaning, the better the result. The contents below will cover the relevant concepts of international logistics communication and the perspective adopted by those who are involved with international trade operations, such as buyers, warehouse managers, customer service supervisors, exporters, importers, and so on. In order to successfully trade across international borders, initially you have to consider that there is a great chance you are trading with non-native English speakers, and they will be much more open to business if they can see that you have a clear message. Communication has an unprecedented importance and plays a crucial role in today's business when dealing with foreign trade and international logistics. The problems and daily activities must be sorted out quickly, and the misunderstandings should be avoided as much as possible to prevent extra costs and rework. The business might even fail due to the lack of communication skills of its employees. So that means the improper use of the language has a direct impact over the operation. It seems to be evident that the success of the international foreign trade and logistics operations strictly depends on the workers' capacity to communicate the details about the process. So here, the important thing is actually that there is a crucial function of how you use the international trade and logistics language and communication style to get across your meaning as accurately as possible so that your operation succeeds. If you even make a mistake on a minor detail when you are trying to conduct this operation, it's going to probably cost you much more than you actually thought about it. So this is crucial because international trade and logistics usually works on the betterment of your communication. If your communication is really good, if it's top-notch level, then you are not going to face any kinds of difficulties, and you need to know what kinds of abbreviations there are. You need to know what kinds of terms that they use to get across their meaning. And also you need to be practical in terms of your communicative content. So we will take a look at all of those examples in the course of this training series. As for the language capacity, the logistics and foreign trade professional must be guided by 4 concepts in order to become ready for takeoff. So there are 4 important concepts that you need to be focusing on, right? 1, vocabulary or keywords. 2, supply chain general interpretation. 3, relevant documentation. And 4, daily communication, which is indispensable, of course. So in terms of vocabulary or keywords, it is essential to learn the appropriate glossary in order to facilitate the communication in an international trade and logistics context. This very first step will show a list that consists of the most common words that are used. However, depending on the segment, such lists can be much longer. An example or definition of each term will be noticed, and that will certainly help you with the contextualization. 2, supply chain general interpretation. This material does not aim to cover logistics processes. Nonetheless, it is necessary to go through some aspects of those logistics processes that might help clarify the overall international trade world. 3, relevant documentation. Once the goods have been ordered and produced, the package becomes ready and many documents will accompany the entire process until the delivery is completed. In order to arrange all the movements, the professionals involved must be aware about the papers that are absolutely necessary. 4, daily communication. That topic will show real life, that is, the practical use of the language involving the foreign trade and logistics contents. The examples of those written conversations might be the basis for other types of communication, such as meetings, conference calls, etc. Supply chain managers are generally focused on scheduling the strategic activities that are related to the business itself and expect the trade professionals to solve the daily situations regarding planning, manufacturing, testing, packaging, and the delivery of what is needed by the customer. Distinguished communication level is usually highlighted by the upper management, as it is understood the workflow would not be interrupted or affected for the lack of such a key component. They expect operational decisions that involve the procurement of materials, change of delivery schedules, transport booking, warehouse movements, and many others to be smoothly taken by those who are able to simplify the ways of sending and receiving information. Daily achievements might give those language-skilled workers the opportunities for reaching higher steps in their careers. Those are the ones that usually attend international conferences, visit customers and suppliers overseas on a frequent basis, embrace intercompany projects, and so on. And you can certainly be one of them. But here we have the word embrace, right? So think about it like this. Normally, what does it mean, embrace? Can somebody tell me?
Decrease? No. Increase.
No. Embrace. Embrace. What does it mean? Does anybody know? Embrace. So it's actually very interesting. When you say embrace, it means to hug somebody, right? To touch somebody very closely, to embrace. But here it is used metaphorically because language tends to do that. So here, embrace intercompany projects, it says. So intercompany projects that are happening in between different companies, and you embrace the projects. How can you embrace a project, right? So this is metaphorically used. So be careful with these kinds of words that are used metaphorically, because it means to embrace intercompany projects. So you can actually work on intercompany projects. You can embrace them. You can be comfortable with those kinds of projects if you are already very good at your language skills, right? So I just wanted to point out the fact that even if it's technical language that you are using in terms of English, French, whatever, the thing is, you will see metaphorical use inside it, and maybe you will see a word that isn't used in technical meanings normally, but be careful about that. So if you want to attend international conferences, visit customers and suppliers overseas on a frequent basis, and embrace intercompany projects, you need to be able to work on these kinds of language skills also. So let's have a look at the supply chain as a general interpretation. So all the movements that are needed to transform natural resources and commodities into a finished product that is desired and delivered to a customer may roughly define the supply chain process. So here we have the word commodity, commodities, you use it plurally. So it's a very frequent word in this context. Do you know what that means, commodity?
Maybe materials, raw materials.
Yeah, commodity, you say, right?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, it could be, but usually commodities are products that are already made from raw materials. So in Turkish, we call this emtia, right? Instead of saying ürün, we say emtia. So there is a very slight difference in between. Usually, when you say commodity, it has a slightly different meaning, like ürün and emtia in Turkish, okay? All right, so we also have the word roughly. Roughly define the supply chain process. What does this mean, even?
Basically, kabaca.
Yeah, it's kind of like basically, it's kabaca in Turkish, right? So it's not exact, it's not completely, perfectly accurate, but it's kind of close, right? When you say roughly, it means that usually also there is another meaning to this. When you say roughly, it means very hardly, very like harshly, okay? So if somebody is punching somebody or hitting somebody very roughly, that is something bad, right? But if you're talking about, okay, it may roughly define the supply chain process. So it is not going to be completely accurate, but it may roughly define the supply chain process. Companies are constantly trying to develop tools to reduce logistics costs, increase customer satisfaction, develop new markets, and count on employees, that are not only technically able to solve the day-by-day challenges, but also present communication skills that will help the coordination of a better process related to the supply of goods worldwide. So here, when I say goods, what does it mean? Goods. The supply of goods.
Products, supply of products.
Yeah, exactly, right? So when you say goods in this context, it means, again, products, right? And also it can be natural resources too, when you say goods. So don't think about it like good or bad. When you use it in the plural form, when you say goods, that is a different thing. That is product now. The interactions among the professionals involved must be performed using the most standardized communication possible. And there are opportunities to be explored from the supplier of raw materials through the transport, customs clearance process, order processing, and even after the goods have been delivered in case an RMA is needed, or if the payment of an invoice has not been noticed by the accounting department. Be careful here, the interactions among the professionals involved must be performed. So what is performed here is interactions. So there are certain words that go together. We use them together in conjunction, right? So can you really perform an interaction? Yes, you can, right? So interactions among the professionals involved must be performed using the most standardized communication possible. And there are opportunities to be explored from the supplier of raw materials through the transport, customs clearance process. So here, what does it mean, clearance? Does anybody know?
In Turkish, kişi güvenlik belgesi.
Yeah, it is
Clearance.
Yeah. It is related to that. And also here, customs is about our boundaries, right? Borders. So customs clearance process. You can also use this word and hear this word a lot in law enforcement, in terms of military, police. So clearance usually means something about security level. Okay, so here it needs to go through a security check in the customs. So in Turkish, you call it clearance, right? Usually we take most of things very similarly. Okay, and also we have RMA here. So we will learn about all of these abbreviations when I send you the terminology and abbreviation list. But just know right now that these kinds of abbreviations will be used very frequently in this context. So you will see them a lot and you will use them a lot if you are working on international trade and logistics. And we will all look at the general overview of them. Typically, the customer's first approach to start the supply of a product is to contact the sales department of the supplier, which provides a quotation and price breaks if applicable, informs the availability, estimated delivery dates, and the order acknowledgement in case the customer places the purchase order. Then the other departments will act according to the demand. So here we have the word if applicable. What does this mean? Does anybody know? If applicable. So anybody? No, right? So if applicable, it means if it is suitable, if it is appropriate, okay? If applicable. So if it is not applicable, then you don't do that, okay? So it's very simple. There are two different conditions. So you can, I will share all these material with you, so you can also review these items. You don't have to learn them on the first try. So you cannot learn any language like that. You need to see it again and again and again, and also you need to consciously work on it, so you can actually make it hardwired in your brain. So, in case, what does this mean? In case the customer places the purchase order. What does this mean? In case. Does anybody know? In case. So it's the same thing with if, okay? If the customer places the purchase order, it's a conditional statement. In case the customer places the purchase order, the same thing. So here I wanted to draw your attention to place order. So here we have the word place, but it's not a noun. It's not like a place like this room, place like a country or something. That is something else. But if you use it as a verb, I placed the bottle on the table. I placed it, for example, right? So this means you just put it there, okay? Place is the purchase order. So you put the purchase order into action. So you usually use this with place an order. I would like to place an order. So you can say place an order in terms of international trade and logistics. Then other departments will act according to the demand. Okay, that's all useful for now. If the product is available in stock and the customer has no credit restrictions, advance payment needed, for instance, the warehouse personnel will have the picking of the product raised according to the priority. So we have the word restrictions here. What does this mean? Restriction. Does anybody know?
Like limitation, limitation.
Yeah, exactly. Right?
Restriction border.
Yeah. So it's kind of like a limitation, exactly. And usually when you talk about your borders of your country, they talk about it like restrictions. Okay, and advance payments needed, for instance. Advance payment, what does this mean? Advance.
I know the advance payment letter. for project implementation, for example.
Yeah. So
Avance. In
exactly.
Turkish, avance.
Yeah, exactly. So it's the same thing as avance, right? So it is happening before the actual event. So advance. Usually when you say advance as a verb, if you use it as a verb, then it means to proceed, to take steps, to go further. Okay? So you can say, for example, my army is advancing. So my people are advancing. So this isn't just meaning you go further, but if you say it as an adjective, for example, here it is used as an adjective, or if you use it as a noun, then it means like avance in Turkish, right? Okay, so it means early payment, advance payment, for instance. The warehouse personnel will have the picking of the product raised according to the priority. Yes, exactly. Once the merchandise is located in the warehouse, the quality team will inspect and certify it so that the packaging and shipping processes will be followed. The freight forwarder will pick up the goods and proceed with the transport according to the priority and Incoterms rules agreed between the buyer and the seller. In an overall circumstance, after shipping, export, and import procedures, the process should be closed once the product is received in good condition by the end user, has the corresponding paperwork, and invoice is paid. So here we have the word corresponding. What does this mean? Does anybody know? Corresponding. So normally to correspond means to communicate, basically. But if you use it as a, here it is used as an adjective, for example, corresponding paperwork. It defines the paperwork. So here, when you say corresponding, it means the relevant paperwork, the paperwork that is needed for that specific product or logistics operation. Okay, so not any other paperwork, just the corresponding paperwork, the relevant paperwork. Okay, so think about it like that. And if you see this on the news as correspondent, what does it mean? Correspondent, you see, right? On BBC, on any other channel, correspondent. So that means muhabir in Turkish, right? Because they communicate information from somewhere else to you. So they are correspondents. But here, when you say corresponding, it means the relevant paperwork. However, if the product that is desired by a customer is unavailable and the demand is received as a back order, then planning, procurement, and logistics teams coordinate the production, purchasing, and transport of the article to fulfill the open PO. Okay. So here we have the word article again, right? Remember, it's not the same thing as the article in a legal document. Here, when we say article, we refer to the product that we are sending. So it's an item of logistics, right? When you say article. To fulfill the open PO. Does anybody know PO? What does it mean as an abbreviation?
Purchasing office.
Yeah, it could be, but here it is purchase order. So it's
Order.
Yeah, purchase order, purchasing order, you can say also. So you need to fulfill the open PO. You need to fulfill the open purchasing order, right? So here, again, fulfill is a verb that you can use about the purchase order. If you fulfill the order, then you have done your job and your customer is happy, okay? The most important objective of the supply chain management is to fulfill customers' needs by efficiently using natural resources, raw materials, and components, as well as distributing the production, managing the inventory, and order processing with modern tools, and also giving advanced training to the professionals in charge of moving such a complex machine. So here we have, again, fulfill Customers' needs this time, right? Normally you said fulfill a PO, but it is used more generally as fulfill needs. I need to fulfill my needs. I need to fulfill my customers' needs, right? So here we also have the phrase in charge of. What does this mean? In charge of. The professionals in charge of moving such a complex machine. What does it mean? In charge of. So let's say Arzu Seçkin is in charge of ODS Consulting Group. Is that true? What is it? I can hear.
Yes, responsible.
Yeah. So the response, yeah, in charge of means responsible for, the same thing, right? In charge of means responsible for moving such a complex machine. It's the same thing. Don't think about it too complicated, okay? Nonetheless, the above points are insufficient without a swift communication channel. And then we may notice the importance of the specific vocabulary, expressions, and standardization adopted in the foreign trade industry. So, nonetheless, what does this mean? Nonetheless.
Nevertheless.
The same thing, right? No difference. Nonetheless, nevertheless, however, all the same thing. Perfect. Insufficient. What does this mean?
Not enough.
Not enough, right? Yes. If you say sufficient, enough. If you say insufficient, not enough, right? Great. Swift. What does this mean?
Change.
It is related, but it's not change. Swift, you are confusing it with switch, probably, right? Switch.
Evet, evet, kesinlikle.
Yes. So when you say Swift, if you use it with big letters like Swift, SWIFT, so here it means something like a banking operation, right? So it's a transaction, something else. But normally Swift means fast, okay? Like this, very fast. Swift communication channel, and then we may notice the importance of the specific vocabulary. It's just a different word for fast, okay? Swift. And standardization adopted in the foreign trade industry. Such knowledge and procedures will help the logistics professional to overcome the language and cultural barriers to perform better. So here we have the word procedures. Procedure, what does this mean? We already know, in Turkish, we already have this word, right? But in the context of international trade and logistics, you will have a lot of procedures, right? Most of you have already actually studied this stuff. So procedures are very important. Procedures and processes, they are different things. Don't forget, not the same thing. Procedure is different, process is different. And also we have the word overcome. This is a verb. What does this mean? Overcome something. Overcome.
Üstesinden gelmek gibi bir şey.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. To overcome the language and cultural barriers. So you overcome, you surpass the language and cultural barriers to perform better. Great. So we will now have a look at transportation peculiarities. So have you heard this word before, peculiarity? Peculiarity. You have not? So when you say peculiarity, it means something that is very special to an object of discussion. So here, when I say peculiarity of transportation, so it's about the specific qualities of that transportation mode, okay? So you will see. The goods move from the beginning of the supply chain process to the end user, and the more efficient the process is, the less the final product costs, and consequently, the margins might be affected in a positive way as well. So, here we have the end user. What does this mean? Do you know?
End user. The last user.
Yes, right. So it's the person that receives your product as a shipment, but it's not going to be a customer all the time. It can be someone who is working in the logistics department. So it will be still sent to the end user. So this is the supply chain process that ends with the end user. So in Turkish, we don't say son kullanıcı sometimes, we say nihai kullanıcı, right? So the less the final product costs and consequently the margins might be affected in a positive way as well. Margin, what does this mean? Margin.
Like part
Yeah.
of something. Part.
Yeah, it defines the part of something. So margins define the parts of things because they are the borders or the limits that we are using to understand things. So when you say margin, for example, it's the limit of something, okay? Usually we have profit margins in business. For example, in Turkish we say kar marjı, right? So what is our limits in terms of our profits? That's why we say marge. Marge is the same thing with margin, okay? And also that's why we say marginal, for example. In Turkish we also have this word, right? Marjinal birisi deriz ya böyle. Mesela. Niye deriz? Çünkü sınırın ötesindedir, marjinlerin orasındadır ya da böyle hani sınırın ucundadır artık, limitin ucundadır. Onun gibi düşün. Marjin böyle bir şeyin çizgisini belirleyen zaten limiti yani. Transport system needs to be optimized by means of integrated logistics solutions as well as a solid communication channel. So, by means of, optimize, by the way, what does it mean? Optimize, you know this, right? Optimization, we use it already to make something as suitable as possible for a function. So the transport system needs to be optimized by means of integrated logistics solutions, as well as a solid communication channel. So here, by means of is the same thing with through or via integrated logistics solutions. Because of, it's the same thing with because of also, because of integrated logistics solutions, as well as a solid communication channel. Solid, what does this mean? Solid. So it means it's reliable, it's trustable, okay? So when you say solid, it means just something straight, normally, when you say solid. Something very straight, okay? Or if you are drinking, for example, alcohol, when you say solid, it means that you don't add anything else. You drink the rakı solid, for example, okay? So there are always different meanings to the same words. Usually, be careful about that. But here it is used as an adjective. It's a solid communication channel. So it means something that you can trust. Trustable communication channel, okay? The growth of the industry and also the negative impacts caused by the pollution, noise, and accidents must be monitored on a regular basis by the professionals in charge so that they will find opportunities to invest in resources that will turn rail, road, air, sea, and inland waterways means of transportation more efficient. Okay. here we have the word monitor. So we know this as a regular noun word, monitor, right? The computer's monitor or something. But if I use it as a verb, what does this mean? So the negative impacts caused by the pollution, noise, and accidents must be monitored on a regular basis. Monitored on a regular basis. So you need to carefully watch it. You need to carefully control it. You need to carefully check it. If you are monitoring something, you are carefully checking on something. Okay? In Turkish, it's kind of like, so you can say takip, izleme, or you can say teftiş, for example. Okay? Monitor. On a regular basis. On a regular basis, the same thing with regularly, no difference, okay? Don't try to look for another meaning, it's the same thing. On a regular basis, by the professionals in charge, so that they will find opportunities to invest in resources that will turn rail, road, air, sea, and inland waterways, means of transportation, more efficient. So here we have the word turn, but it is connected to the words more efficient. Turn what more efficient? Turn rail, road, air, sea, and inland water means of transportation more efficient. So English, you can divide phrases into different parts sometimes, and this is an example. It doesn't say turn rail, it says turn more efficient, but in between there is the object. But the object has a lot of different constituents, which are rail, road, air, sea, and inland waterways means of transportation. Water is the slowest mode of transportation, but most of the times it is considered the least expensive. So if it is clear that the goods do not need to be shipped in a hurry, the logistics agents should take actions and communicate themselves clearly about the option to be followed. The same is applied for urgent shipments that are usually sent by air with a higher cost. The respective people must be aligned about the mode of transport to be used on each shipment and therefore meet expectations regarding pricing and on-time delivery. The discussions must be clear before, during, and after the delivery. So here we have the word respective. So don't confuse this with the normal word respect. It's something different. When you say respectful, it's different. When you say respective, it's different. Does anybody know what respective means? Respective. The respective people. So it's not about the actual emotion of respect, okay? The respective people, when you say respective as opposed to respectful, respective means the relevant again, okay? So the respective people means the people who are working on that specific subject, people who are working in that specific department, people who are authorized to actually conduct the operation that we are sending them. So these are the respective people. So here also, not to mention that your communications must be clear before, during, and after the delivery. So you need to be very careful and thorough in terms of your operation. So let's have a brief overview of the customer services and support. So no matter the type of merchandise being procured, the daily life of the international logistics professional is built upon providing the most accurate information possible, using the proper tools and the language skills to be effective, make things clearer, and overcome the challenges. Good communication corrects eventual failures found along the way and makes the integration simpler, more objective, and practical, while poor communication could lead the situation to a chaotic scenario, losses of revenues, commercial disputes, and so on. There are endless opportunities throughout the supply chain that can be explored in order to improve the services and exceed customers' expectations. Here, exceed customers' expectations. What does it mean when you say that? Exceed. So when you exceed expectations, like exceeding customers' expectations, it means you surpass their expectations. So they expect, let's say, 10 performance points from you, but you give them 20 performance points. So that's exceeding expectations, okay? So don't forget that, exceed customers' expectations. Always, we should always strive for exceeding our customers' expectations so that we can be better for them. In certain types of business, such as aviation and medical industries, for example, the warehouses and the customer service teams work on a 24/7 basis. So vendors are constantly updating their customers about the order statuses, when the cargo is ready for collection, if an order needs amendments regarding MOQ to prevent the shipment getting stuck, when a date of expiry of a perishable material has to be approved prior to shipping, if an urgent shipment has respected the cutoff time, and so on. So here we have MOQ and cutoff time. So cutoff time here is also a specific terminology that you will find in the list that I will send you. But here we also have MOQ. So right now, if anybody knows, tell me. If you don't know, we can move on and we can look at the whole list later on. Do you know MOQ? Does anybody know? What does it mean?
Minimum order quantities.
Yes, exactly. Perfect. Great. Minimum order quantities, right? So here there are a lot of different abbreviations like this that we will look at together in our next lessons. But first, we need to have a look at Incoterms, which are international commercial terms. The Incoterms rules are the commercial responsibilities of sellers and buyers defined by the International Chamber of Commerce, ICC, right? Those rules specify who is responsible for paying for the shipment, managing customs clearance, dealing with insurance and other processes. By following the Incoterms definitions, the companies would know beforehand their obligations regarding costs and risks that are associated with the transportation and delivery of the goods. Obligation, what does it mean? Something that you have to do, right? It's a rule, it's the law, so it's obligation. Each Incoterms rule defines a type of agreement for the supply of goods internationally, and the rules are aligned with governments and the agents involved in the process. So here we have the word align, means to put yourself in the same position, on the same line with somebody else, or put your organization on the same position with some other organization. Here, the rules are aligned with governments and the agents involved in the process. So don't confuse the word agent here with the agent in a CIA or something, okay? So in CIA, FBI, there are agents, but they are not really agents, they are spies, okay? When you say agent, you are an agent also. Everybody is an agent when you say agent, actually. But agent means somebody who is doing a specific job, actually, who is representing a specific corporation, company, or organization. So it's not like all the time spies or people who are doing intelligence work, okay? So here, agents involved in the process are the people who are authorized to work on these types of agreements. The main purpose is to reduce the barriers found in different countries and keep the logistics workflow in the most standard level possible. including the responsible party for providing a specific document, who pays for transport, who is responsible in case the cargo is damaged, etc. Remember, in case the cargo is damaged, who is responsible, or who is responsible if the cargo is damaged? The same thing, right? Basically, once the rule is set, the seller and the buyer should have no doubt about their responsibility from the moment the product is invoiced until it is received at the final destination. So we have the word once here. Once the rule is set. This doesn't mean only once. It means once the rule is set, after the rule is set, there is no turning back, okay? And invoiced. Normally we have the word invoice, that is true, but invoice is a noun. You can also use it as a verb, like this. The product is invoiced. I invoiced that specific product, like this, okay? Invoiced until it is received at the final destination. Generally, the Incoterms rules beginning with F refer to those which the shipping costs are not paid by the seller. The ones beginning with E refer to shipments which the seller has the least responsibility. That is, once the goods are ready to be collected at the seller's facility, the buyer is in charge of the transport. The ones beginning with C are those which the shipping is paid by the seller. There are some that begin with D, and those refer to a longer responsibility of the seller. That is, the goods must reach out to a certain point in the transit, and sometimes even the local taxes are paid by the seller. The list provided here is a brief overview about the most common Incoterms rules used these days. For a comprehensive list, it is recommended to visit the International Chamber of Commerce website. All right. So we have the Incoterms CFR. This means cost and freight. CFR requires the seller to pay the costs and freight necessary to move the goods to the designated port of destination. The risk of loss or damage to the goods must be treated by the buyer from the moment the goods are on board. CIF, cost, insurance, and freight. It covers almost the same as CFR, but the seller will insure the merchandise instead of the buyer. CPT, carriage paid to. The seller must pay the freight of the merchandise to the named destination. The risks of loss or damage are transferred to the buyer from the moment the goods are transferred to the forwarder. CIP, carriage and insurance paid. This term is mainly used for multimodal transport. It is similar to CPT, but the seller pays for the insurance against the loss or damage, while the buyer is in charge of the import customs clearance, payment of customs duties, and taxes apart from other risks. DAP, delivered at place. The seller delivers the cargo at the buyer's designated destination on the means of transport, ready to be unloaded. The seller assumes all risks and costs for this delivery and has no obligations regarding the insurance of the cargo. DDP, delivery duty paid. The maximum responsibility of the seller with all the tasks involved when moving goods from the manufacturing plant to the buyer's door. DPU, delivery at place unloaded. DPU has replaced DAT, which is delivery at terminal. The seller delivers the cargo at a named destination, unloaded from the means of transport. The seller pays for the transport but has no obligations regarding the insurance of the cargo. EXW, Ex-Works. The buyer pays from the transport and assumes all risks. EXW is followed by the name of the place where the product will be available. Example, EXW/ or dash Miami. FAS, free alongside ship. The main carriage is unpaid by the seller. The seller is responsible for the shipping costs until the product is available alongside a vessel in a local port. FCA, free carrier. The seller delivers the goods to the carrier or to whom the buyer indicates at the designated location, apart from loading into the carrier vehicle. The buyer's responsibilities begin when the goods are received by the nominated carrier. FOB, free on board. The goods are placed on board the ship by the seller at a port of shipment named in the sales agreement. The buyer assumes the risks and the costs once the goods are delivered. So let's have a look at some common abbreviations also. Now, I will only have a synopsis of these, and when you look at the full list, I want you to actually circle the parts that you have a hard time understanding, and you can ask me about them when you see me in the office, or you can ask me in our next lesson, okay? So, for example, let's have a look at a few of those. We have the abbreviation ACK. It's the abbreviation for acknowledgement. So acknowledgement means you accept that something exists, okay? So the ACK shows the items, quantities, prices, delivery dates, and more info for a purchase order placed by the customer. We have also AOG, which means aircraft on ground. This is an expression used to indicate the aircraft has a problem that prevents it from flying, and usually spare parts are needed in a rush. We have AWB, which is for airway bill. The AWB is a transport document that shows each phase of the movement related to the cargo until its delivery. Usually, the carriers have the AWBs updated online, so the customers are able to track their shipments. So we have also BL, bill of lading, BN, booking note, BO, back order. For example, if your item is not available, that will be treated internally as a BO, which means back orders. So you will all try to do contextualization if you want to learn something. So all of these abbreviations should be used in a specific context if you want to learn all of them. We have, for example, BRK, which is the abbreviation for broker. That product is no longer supplied by us, so you will probably have to search for it through a BRK. We also have CAM, Customer Account Manager, for example. As a new customer, I would like to have the contacts of the CAM in my region. We also have CBM, which is the abbreviation for cubic meters, right? We have CRT for critical. The attached PO shows a CRT priority, so please provide the ACK and shipping details as fast as possible. We have triple D, right? DDD, drop dead rate. Production has been postponing the delivery due to lack of raw material. So we need to know the DDD in order to take further actions. So these are some common abbreviations, but there are many more that you will see on the list, and we will have a look at them in the future lessons as well. So let's now focus briefly on two concepts before finishing. And one of them is inbound logistics, right? So you need to think about logistics in two main senses. One of them is inbound, the other is outbound, okay? So in inbound logistics, activities refer to receiving, storing, and distributing raw materials to be used in the production, assembly line, or placed on the shelves of a warehouse to be shipped later on to an end user. Inbound logistics services cover all the movements required to bring goods from a sourcing location to a local warehouse or manufacturing facility, and those can be the transportation of raw materials, cross-docking process, warehousing inventory, quarantine, and materials handling. So I want you to look at these highlighted words, but instead of explanation, please try to find their meanings on their own when I share it with you, okay? Because otherwise you're not going to memorize them. For example, assembly line. Okay, I can tell you that. Assembly line means in the production manufacturing, we have assembled products, right? So they put together products into a line. So that's an assembly line, right? So you need to explain these kinds of phrases or words or technical terms to yourself in a simple way so you can remember them. So, for example, sourcing location. What can it be? Very simple, right? cross-docking process. This is a little bit more technical. What can it be? So your curiosity will lead you to the right kind of memorization, but don't just try to, okay, this means that, and move on. You will never remember anything, okay? So in terms of outbound logistics perspective, the activities are related to the actions required to get the goods delivered to the customer. The focus is the distribution of goods by optimizing the transit time, reducing costs, eliminating movements, providing customers with additional information such as automatic shipping and backorder reports, replacement certificates, and other possible improvements that have direct impact on the transit of the shipments. And in terms of common abbreviations, so we already looked at those. So I will share the rest of the list on our platform. But for now, I think this is it. And let me just return back to you in a second. Okay, so thank you for listening. Teşekkür ediyorum arkadaşlar.
Teşekkürler.
Aynen.
Biz teşekkür ederiz.
Oturum haftaya Cuma olacak. Sonraki de 23 Haziran'da olacak. Yine buluşmak üzere, haberleşmek üzere. Bir sorunuz olursa ulaşırsınız bana.
Teşekkürler İhsan Bey.
Teşekkürler. İyi akşamlar herkese.
Görüşmek üzere. Sağ olun.